What if every time you looked in the mirror, it whispered back? Whispers from the mirror is a chilling descent into a cursed reflection, where guilt takes form, and the past refuses to stay buried. Follow Rachel and Emily as they unravel a horrifying truth that stares back at them with blood-stained smiles. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to never look at your own reflection the same way again. Subscribe for more horror stories that will haunt your nights and stay with you long after the screen goes dark. It started with a whisper, not the kind that tickled your ear from someone beside you, but the kind that seemed to rise from the walls, from the air, from deep inside the mirror itself. Emily Quinn didn't believe in haunted objects. She was a 28-year-old school librarian who lived alone in her grandmother's house, inherited just a few weeks prior. It sat at the edge of town, an old Victorian shell with creaking bones and dusty secrets. She had moved in with the intention of slowly renovating the place, giving herself a project to occupy her weekends. But the mirror wasn't part of the plan. It hung in the hallway upstairs, mounted above a carved oak dresser, its frame ornate with blackened ivy patterns that curled like veins. The glass, slightly warped with age, didn't quite reflect true. Light bent in strange ways around it. It had been her grandmother's, always covered with a thick velvet cloth. Emily assumed it was just to protect the frame. She didn't question it until the first night she left it uncovered. Rain lashed the windows like bony fingers. The wind howled low through the chimney, a drawn-out groan that rose and fell as if the house were sighing. Emily had been lying in bed, reading, when she heard the sound. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the rain. It was a voice, a whisper. She froze, the paperback falling from her hands. Her eyes darted toward the hallway where the sound seemed to originate. At first, she told herself it must be the pipes, the storm, her imagination. But the longer she lay there, holding her breath, the clearer it became. A soft, wet whisper, like breath passing through a mouth too close to the glass. She got up, pulled on a robe, and stepped barefoot into the hallway. The wooden floor was cold and groaned under her weight. She stood in front of the mirror and waited. Nothing. Her reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed, lips slightly parted, as if holding in a question. She turned away, and the whisper came again. This time, it formed words. You remember. She spun back around. The mirror was silent, still. The air was heavier now, thick with something like dread. Emily leaned closer, studying her own eyes. Was it her reflection, or was there something else behind her? She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she almost convinced herself it had been a dream, but on the floor beneath the mirror, she found a damp footprint, only one. The library was a welcome distraction. Dust and dread didn't follow her there. Rows of books, the low hum of overhead lights, and the occasional clatter of keyboards helped her focus. But even there, strange things began to leak into her days. Once, when she passed by the mirror section, she swore a reflection flickered in the polished metal of a bookend. An old woman's face, mouth moving silently. Another time, She found a returned book on her desk. No title, just a plain black cover and, inside, a single line scrawled across the first page in faded red ink. "Tell them what you did." She slammed it shut and threw it in the return bin. When she opened it again, it was blank. Every page. By the time Friday came, Emily was fraying at the edges. She hadn't slept properly all week. Her dreams were filled with static whispers and flickering glass. The mirror called to her in ways she couldn't explain. It had a gravity, like a wound you couldn't help but press. That night, she stood in front of it again. The house was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock downstairs. She stared at her reflection, her hand trembling slightly as she reached up and touched the cool glass. Emily, her name, spoken softly, slowly, from nowhere and everywhere. She gasped, stepping back, but the voice continued. "He knows, the one in the ground." Emily's chest tightened. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. But the mirror gave no answer, just a faint, high-pitched hiss, like breath caught in an old man's throat. She turned away, only to see something impossible. Her reflection hadn't turned. It stood, frozen, watching her, eyes wide, mouth curling into a smirk. Then it moved. A single tilt of the head. Emily ran. The next day, she covered the mirror with the velvet cloth. But that night, the whispers came louder. "Dig. Confess." She pressed her hands over her ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside her head, but shaped like breath against cold glass. She began to remember, not in full, but in flashes. A summer long ago. She had been 16. A party in the woods. Her boyfriend, Trevor. A dare. A fight. A scream. A rock slick with blood. They buried it all. Literally. No one found out. Trevor had left town. She never saw him again. But the mirror knew. On Sunday, the cloth was on the floor again. She didn't remember taking it off. Her reflection was waiting. But this time, something else stared with her. A second face, flickering just over her shoulder. It was Trevor, younger than he should be now, pale, soil-stained, mouth stitched shut with shadow. He raised a finger and pointed at her chest. Her heart stuttered. The lights in the hallway dimmed. A groaning creak echoed from beneath the floorboards. Then came the soft sound of nails dragging down the glass. Slow, deliberate, scrape, scrape. Emily stumbled back and fell. The whisper came again, now clearer than ever. "Say it." She crawled backward down the hallway, never taking her eyes off the mirror. Her own face remained still in the glass, lips twitching into a grin not her own. She slammed her bedroom door, locked it. But the whisper passed through the walls. "Say it, or he'll come through." That night she dreamed of dirt under her fingernails, a hand breaking through the ground, eyes opened in the soil, the sound of cracking glass, spreading like a spider's web across the mirror's face, and at the center of it, her, smiling, holding the stone. Emily awoke, gasping, sweat chilling her skin. It was still dark. She sat up and turned toward the door. It was open. In the hallway, a faint silver glow pulsed from beneath the mirror's cloth. And then, soft and breathless, came the final whisper. Next time, he speaks. Emily sat motionless on the edge of her bed, the sheets twisted around her like a shroud. The darkness in her room felt thicker than before, as though it had substance, weight, intent. Her hands trembled on her lap, fingertips cold despite the warmth of the blanket. In the hallway, that faint silver glow still pulsed beneath the mirror's velvet covering. She hadn't put it back on. She knew that. And yet there it was, draped neatly over the glass, as if someone or something had grown tired of waiting and had dressed the mirror itself. The whisper lingered in her head like a parasite. Next time he speaks. She glanced toward the hallway. Silence. The kind of silence that rang in your ears, sharp and unnatural. Then a sound broke it. A single soft knock, gentle as a child's tap. But it came from the inside of the mirror. The noise was too precise, too centered, too knowing. Emily stood, her bare feet touching the cold wooden floor. Every board beneath her seemed to sigh and complain as she walked to the door. She paused before opening it, her breath shallow and thin. Her fingers hovered over the knob, then turned it slowly. The hallway was dim, washed in a strange silver light that flickered faintly like a candle's dying breath. She took a step forward. The mirror stood at the far end, wrapped once again in velvet. But something was different. She felt it even before she saw it. A dampness in the air, a chill seeping through the walls, the scent of soil. Then she noticed the floor beneath the mirror was wet. A thin trail of muddy water stretched down the hallway toward her. The footprints smeared and uneven, as though made by someone dragging a limp leg. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. She moved closer. Step by cautious step until she reached the dresser beneath the mirror. The cloth covering it was moving, not lifting, not falling, but shifting, as if something underneath was breathing. Slowly, in, out. She reached up and placed a hand on the cloth. The fabric was damp. Her fingers trembled as she peeled it back. The mirror was fogged, though the air was still. A single message had been drawn in the condensation, written by a finger that had left behind dark streaks in the glass. Confess or reflect. She stared at the words, unable to breathe. Then the whisper came again, different this time, not urgent, not angry. It was patient. He waits for your truth or your place. Something moved behind the glass, a shadow, a shape. She leaned in. Her reflection stared back, but not quite. The eyes were wrong. They were wider, darker, and they didn't blink when she did. The lips of the reflection began to move, but no sound came, just the sensation of pressure against her ears. Then the whisper returned. Tell them what you buried. Emily stumbled back and fled down the stairs. Her feet hit the hardwood with a sickening rhythm, the echoes chasing her like footsteps not her own. She reached the kitchen and turned on every light. It didn't help. The house still felt cold, alive. Her eyes flicked toward the back door. She needed air. She needed out. She opened it, and the wind howled in like a scream. Trees swayed violently, their branches clawing at the sky. She stepped outside and pulled her robe tight, eyes scanning the yard. The garden. It was still there, overgrown and dying. But she remembered. There had been a place, hidden behind the hedges, a spot no one touched. She walked to it barefoot, through the mud and dying grass, until she reached the far corner. There it was, a patch of disturbed earth, covered now with leaves and moss. Her breath hitched. The sound of a shovel echoed in her ears, though there was none, just memory. She dropped to her knees and began to dig with her hands. The soil was soft, wet, clinging to her skin like blood. And then she found it, a box, wooden, rotten. She pulled it free and opened it. Inside, a single object wrapped in plastic. The rock, the one from that night, stained with something dark, something old. Beside it, a photograph. Her and Trevor, smiling, happy, before the scream, before the blood, before the lie. Her stomach turned. She dropped the box and staggered back. A sound rose behind her. Crunching footsteps. She spun around. Nothing. Just the wind. But in the distance, near the house, she saw the door swinging open. The mirror was no longer upstairs. It stood in the doorway. Uncovered, and it was glowing. She didn't remember walking back inside, only the feel of her own legs trembling beneath her. Her hands covered in mud. The whisper in her head was louder now, insistent. You brought it back. Now look. She was standing in front of the mirror again, but this time there was no reflection, only darkness, black glass, like a doorway. And then it moved. Something inside. A figure stepped forward, slow and dragging. Trevor, but not as he had been. His face was pale, lips blue, eyes hollow. Water dripped from his clothes, puddling at his feet. On the other side of the glass, his mouth opened slowly. No sound came, just the cracking of glass. Then he raised his hand and pressed it against the inside of the mirror. The surface rippled. Emily screamed and stumbled back, knocking over the dresser. The lights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the house, and from within it came the voice. Not a whisper this time, but a breathless moan. I never left. You did. The mirror cracked, a single line snaking from top to bottom. Then another, a web of fractures. The glass pulsed once, then went still. Emily lay on the floor, sobbing. The ring was cold, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. She crawled toward the shattered mirror and looked. Her reflection was there again, but it wasn't her. It smiled, slowly, and whispered, Now we share the guilt. A soft tapping started behind the glass, faint at first, then louder. Tap, 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 like fingernails against a coffin lid. Emily stood and backed away. She knew now. It would not stop, not until the truth was spoken, not until the mirror broke its silence forever. The next morning brought no comfort. The sky was bruised gray, clouds hanging low like they were waiting for something dreadful to begin. Emily sat in the kitchen, clutching a chipped mug of coffee she didn't drink. Her eyes were bloodshot, hollow, fixed on the window where the breeze made the branches scratch like fingernails against glass. The mirror had stopped whispering, but that silence felt more dangerous than the sounds. She knew it wasn't over. Whatever she had awakened, whatever had found her, it hadn't finished. The crack in the mirror remained, thin, sharp, jagged like a lightning bolt frozen mid-strike. Each time she passed it, she could feel its presence like the glass was breathing, watching, listening, waiting. That morning, she called Rachel. Rachel was her oldest friend, someone who had once known the version of her that smiled easily and didn't jump at shadows. They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Emily had drifted from everyone, retreating into quiet routines and excuses. But now she needed someone to pull her out of the cold spiral tightening around her. When Rachel picked up, her voice was hesitant. "Em? Wow, it's been a while." "I need to talk," Emily said, barely able to steady her voice. "Can you come over?" There was a pause, then a gentle, "Of course, I'll be there in an hour." Emily didn't go near the mirror while she waited. She could hear it, though, like a slow, rhythmic hum inside her bones. The air near it buzzed faintly, a low static vibration that made the back of her teeth ache. She stayed in the living room, curled into herself, staring at nothing. When the knock came, she almost cried with relief. Rachel stood on the porch with a concerned expression and 2 travel mugs in hand. "You sound awful," she said gently, stepping inside. "Have you even slept?" Emily closed the door behind her. "Not really." They sat in the living room, and Rachel listened while Emily told her everything. The mirror, the whispers, the dream, the rock, Trevor. She expected Rachel to laugh, to say she needed rest, a doctor, medication. But Rachel didn't. Her face grew pale as Emily spoke, her fingers tightening around the mug. "I remember that summer," Rachel said softly. "You and Trevor. Everyone thought you two were perfect. Then he just disappeared." Emily nodded slowly. "He didn't just leave. He died. I killed him." Rachel didn't respond. Her breath caught. "It was an accident," Emily continued. "We were drunk, arguing. He pushed me. I pushed back. He hit his head. There was blood. I panicked. I buried it all." Rachel whispered, "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I couldn't bear it. I told myself it was self-defense, that it was just easier to forget. But it didn't forget you." Emily looked up, her eyes raw. "No, it didn't." A sound cut through the room, a faint tick, 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 like metal tapping slowly against glass. Rachel looked toward the hallway. "What was that?" Emily stood. "It's starting again." They moved together toward the stairs. The sound grew louder. With every step, the air became colder, like walking into a crypt. When they reached the landing, they both stopped. The mirror was uncovered again. The crack in the center had spread, branching out like veins, like roots searching through the surface for something deeper. Rachel moved closer. "It's broken." Emily reached out and touched the glass. Instantly, the house groaned, a low guttural sound like wood straining under a terrible weight. And the mirror responded. A voice, Trevor's, rose from within. "Still hiding?" Rachel gasped. The surface rippled, and a face formed behind the glass. Not reflected, present. Trevor. His features were sunken, bloated, waterlogged. His eyes wept dark trails. His lips were pale and cracked, the same face from Emily's dream. Emily stepped back. I tried to let you rest. You let yourself rest. I was buried in pieces. Rachel backed against the wall, shaking. This isn't real. This isn't happening. Trevor's image smiled. But it was a wrong smile, twisted, like the skin had forgotten how to shape joy. Say it, Emily. Say what you did, or I'll pull her in. His hand reached forward, pressing against the glass. Rachel screamed. The mirror pulsed, and a cold wind burst from it, rushing through the hallway with a deafening howl. The lights flickered violently. Emily grabbed Rachel and pulled her back. "Don't look at it!" Emily shouted over the roar. "He feeds on it!" Rachel shut her eyes, sobbing. The wind died instantly. Silence fell. Trevor was gone. The mirror showed only their reflections, wide-eyed, pale, shaking. But the crack had deepened. Rachel left an hour later, shaken and quiet. She didn't offer platitudes, didn't say Emily was imagining it. She just hugged her tightly and whispered, "Be careful." Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat in front of the mirror, a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. She stared into the cracked glass, her reflection fragmented. In some shards, she looked younger, in others, older. In one, she wasn't there at all. She touched the crack and whispered, "What do you want?" The mirror responded with silence. Then a sound, not a whisper, a sob. A low, broken sob, hers, but it came from behind the glass. She backed away, her breath catching. The crack spread again, splinters forming letters. Slowly, painfully, confess. Emily dropped to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The house groaned again, a long, yawning creak. Then a voice, not Trevor's, older, female, her grandmother. "You should never have touched it." Emily screamed. The mirror shattered. A scream ripped through the hallway. Not hers, from inside the glass. A scream that echoed and echoed. And then silence. Shards of glass rained down, catching the light like frozen tears. The frame stood empty, but in the center of the dresser, a small, blood-stained rock, waiting. The shattered mirror no longer whispered. It no longer breathed or hummed or glowed. But the silence that followed was worse. It was the kind of silence that made your skin prickle, not from calm, but from expectation, as if something were holding its breath just behind the veil, waiting for the next crack in the surface of reality to slide through. Emily swept up the broken glass in silence, each shard catching reflections that didn't belong to her. In one, her mouth smiled while her own face remained frozen. In another, her eyes blinked, but she hadn't. She threw the last shard into the trash and covered the empty frame with the velvet cloth again, though it no longer held a mirror. Just a black void behind it, like the surface had been ripped open and nothing had come to fill it. She left the hallway without turning back. The rest of the day passed like a blur, time dragging its nails through her thoughts. Her hands still shook. Her ears still rang with that final, bone-deep scream that had erupted when the mirror broke. It had been a scream of something being ripped away or set free. That night, she locked every door and window, lit every light. She made tea, but forgot to drink it. The air in the house was thicker than usual, as if dust had taken on a life of its own. Every corner seemed darker. Every shadow leaned in just a little closer. At midnight, it began again. It started with the ticking, not the clock, from beneath the floorboards. Tick, tick, tick. Emily sat up in bed. The blankets twisted around her like a cocoon. She held her breath and listened. The sound continued, steady and soft, like a metronome in a room with no time. Then came the creak. A floorboard, one she knew well, outside her room. She stood slowly, reaching for the bat she kept by her nightstand. Her bare feet touched the cool floor, and every inch of her skin pulled tight. Another creak. Closer. She stepped into the hallway. The lights flickered once, then again, then held. The shattered mirror's frame was still covered, but something dripped beneath it. A slow, rhythmic drop of water. Drip, drip, drip. Emily approached, heart pounding against her ribs like a fist trapped inside a chest. She pulled the cloth aside. The mirror was whole again, pristine. No cracks, no spiderweb veins, smooth, clean. Wrong. Her own reflection stared back at her, but behind it stood someone else. Trevor, still soaked, still silent. His eyes met hers. And then he whispered, "Midnight is remembering." Emily gasped, stumbling back. He stepped closer in the reflection, but didn't move in the world, only in the glass. "You broke the glass, but not the guilt." His voice was no longer wet and breathless. It was cold, clear. He pressed his hand against the inside of the mirror. The glass fogged. From within, something began to pound. Thump, thump, like fists slamming against wood. Then the whispering began again, only this time. It wasn't a single voice. It was many. Children, women, men, all speaking over one another, murmuring, moaning, accusing. She buried the truth. She never told. The stone was soaked. Emily covered her ears, but the sound was inside her skull now. She dropped the bat and screamed. The lights blew out. Darkness swallowed the hallway, and in the mirror, Trevor stepped forward. Through the glass. He landed silently on the wooden floor, water pooling around his bare feet. His eyes were empty sockets filled with shadows. He raised his hand and pointed behind her. Emily turned. The hallway was gone. Only black, endless black. And in that blackness, a single stone path stretching into the dark. She looked back. Trevor was gone. The mirror was gone. She stood alone. Or so she thought. Footsteps echoed behind her, soft, bare, slow. She walked forward, heart in her throat, every step heavier than the last. The whispers followed, now low, now urgent. The path stretched on forever, and then a door, wooden, old. She reached for the knob and opened it. The scent hit her first. Soil, rot, wet earth. She stepped inside. The basement of her grandmother's house, but older, darker, colder. And there, in the center, was a mirror. Cracked, not broken, The same one, waiting. Trevor stood behind it, staring through. He lifted a finger and touched the glass, and from behind her, dozens of hands reached out from the darkness, dragging, pulling. Emily screamed, clawed, kicked, but the hands held tight. The mirror opened, and she was pulled in. The sound of cracking glass filled the void. Then, silence. Back in the house, the hallway was empty. The mirror stood whole and untouched. Emily's room was empty. Her tea was still cold, and in the reflection of the mirror, she stood, but her eyes were not hers, and her mouth was smiling. The house was too quiet, not the natural stillness of early morning or the peaceful hush of sleep, but a dead quiet, a silence so thick it felt nailed into the walls, the kind that throbbed like pressure behind the eyes, that screamed without making a sound. Rachel arrived just after noon. She had called Emily 3 times that morning with no answer. Each call went straight to voicemail, her voice growing more urgent each time. The last message she left had been desperate. "Emily, please, just text me. I'm coming over." When she pulled up to the old Victorian house, the curtains were still drawn. The front door hung slightly ajar. The wind stirred it gently, letting it creak and tap against the frame like a nervous finger. Rachel stepped inside, clutching her keys tight between her fingers. "Emily?" Her voice barely echoed. There was no reply. She moved into the living room. The lamp beside the couch was still on. A cold mug of tea sat untouched on the coffee table. The air was stale, tinged with the faint scent of wet soil, and something older, metallic, like rusted iron. She took the stairs slowly. Each step let out a groan. At the top, the hallway stretched out like a tunnel. The mirror. It stood tall again at the end of the corridor, covered once more in velvet. Clean, uncracked, undisturbed. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She stepped forward. "Emily, are you here?" No answer. The bedroom door was half open, the bed untouched. No signs of struggle, no signs of life. Rachel turned back toward the mirror. Her eyes narrowed. The cloth, it wasn't just covering the frame. It was pulsing, ever so slightly, in, out, like breath through old lungs. She approached it, her fingers twitching. She remembered the last time she saw it. Trevor. That bloated face, the scream that shattered light, the wind, and Emily. Emily had been shaken but alive, terrified but present. Now she was gone. Rachel reached for the velvet. Her hand shook. She pulled it aside. The mirror's surface shimmered, not like glass, like water. The reflection showed the hallway, but no Rachel. Only a dark corridor behind the glass, stretching deeper and deeper into an unseen place. A figure stood in the distance, small, barefoot, hair matted, a dress soaked at the hem. Rachel leaned closer. "Emily?" The figure in the glass raised its head. Its eyes were pitch black. Its mouth opened in a slow, dragging smile. Rachel stumbled back, the mirror rippling violently, as if something beneath had been disturbed. And then it screamed, not with a mouth, with the glass itself, a shrill, shattering wail that filled the entire hallway. Rachel dropped to the ground, hands clamped over her ears. Lights flickered, the walls pulsed, footsteps echoed up the stairs, fast, heavy. Rachel scrambled to her feet and looked back toward the stairwell. No one, just the creaking of floorboards, getting louder, closer. The mirror shook on the wall. The surface began to crack again. Hairline fractures creeping across the silver. And behind the glass, more faces, dozens, all watching, all silent, except for one. Emily, pale, wide-eyed, mouth moving silently. Rachel stepped forward. "I see you. Emily, I see you." But Emily wasn't speaking. She was screaming. The sound didn't come through the mirror. It was trapped behind it, as if she were submerged beneath a frozen lake, pounding against the ice. The fractures deepened. Rachel reached out, pressing her hand to the glass. Cold. So cold. She could feel her bones stiffen instantly, and then the whisper came, not from behind, from within. One must take her place. Rachel's breath fogged the mirror. The glass shimmered. Emily's eyes turned toward her, and then the mirror exploded, but not outward, inward, sucked into itself like breath being drawn into black lungs. Rachel was thrown back against the wall. Dust, shards, silence. The frame remained empty. No glass, no silver, just a void. And in that void, a single eye blinked. Rachel ran. She didn't look back. She didn't scream. She fled the house, jumped into her car, and drove until the trees blurred and the sky changed, and the road forgot where it had taken her. But when she stopped, when she finally looked in her rearview mirror, Emily was there, sitting in the back seat, smiling. And the whisper returned. "Now you've seen behind the silver." Rachel didn't sleep for 3 nights. The image of Emily in the rearview mirror haunted her every blink. It hadn't been a hallucination, not a trick of the eyes. Emily had been there, mud-stained, hollow-cheeked, smiling without warmth. The kind of smile that doesn't belong to a living person. When Rachel turned in her seat that day, the back seat had been empty. But the cold, the smell, the silence left behind, it stayed. Long after she locked her car. Long after she showered and scrubbed her hands raw, it was inside her now. The whispers started the next night. They came not from a mirror, but from her phone. Not voices exactly, static. Murmurs, hissing syllables just beneath comprehension. At first, she thought it was a glitch. Then she saw the screen light up on its own, the camera turning on in the dark, and her reflection smiled when she didn't. Rachel knew she had to go back. Something in that house had Emily, or was pretending to be her, and it was spreading, leaking into the world like oil through paper. She drove back on the 4th day. The road seemed longer, the trees taller. Shadows shifted even beneath the afternoon sun. As the house emerged over the hill, Rachel felt her stomach tighten like a noose pulling against her ribs. The front door was closed this time. She stepped out, gravel crunching beneath her shoes, and approached the porch with a sense of dread that clung to her skin. The key Emily had given her still worked. The door creaked open slowly, too slowly, as if the hinges themselves were reluctant to let her inside. The air was colder now, not just cool, but damp and heavy, the kind of chill that suggested something dead and buried. Inside, the house looked almost untouched, but Rachel knew better. There was rot behind the wallpaper, something breathing behind the walls. She stepped cautiously through the living room. The floorboards didn't creak under her this time. As if the house was holding its breath, she reached the staircase. The air was different here, thicker, weighted with memory. Each step up felt harder than the last, like she was climbing against gravity itself. When she reached the hallway, the velvet cloth was gone. The mirror stood uncovered, whole, shining, wrong. Rachel's own reflection stared back, but behind it stood shadows. Not figures exactly, just the presence of figures. The suggestion of someone watching from a place deeper than glass. She stepped closer. The hallway behind her dimmed. The mirror's surface rippled once, and then her reflection blinked. But she didn't. Rachel froze. The reflection smiled. Not hers, not her. It tilted its head slowly. A whisper slid beneath the surface of the mirror, soft and serpentine. She showed us the way. You hold the door open now. Rachel stepped back. Her reflection did not. It leaned forward, pressing its hand against the inside of the mirror. The sound of nails dragging across glass filled the hallway, slow and deliberate. Screech! Then a knock from within. 1, 2, 3. The hallway light above her flickered, and the mirror shattered. But this time, the shards didn't fall. They floated, suspended in mid-air, spinning slowly, each fragment reflecting something different. Not Rachel, not this hallway, but other places. A flooded basement, a room with no doors, a forest of broken mirrors. And in each fragment, someone stood, mouth open, screaming, silent. Rachel backed away, heart racing, but the shadows behind the glass reached through the frame now. Long arms of smoke and bone, hands with fingers that twisted too far backward. They grabbed at the air, grabbed at her. She turned and ran. Down the stairs, the house groaned with each footstep, as if waking from a long sleep. The walls pulsed, the lights blinked violently. She reached the front door. It wouldn't open. The doorknob was cold, ice cold, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. Behind her, the footsteps came again, slow, measured, wet. She turned. Emily stood at the top of the stairs, but it wasn't her anymore. The skin was too pale, the eyes too dark, and her voice came like breath on broken glass. We are behind every silver surface. You let us look. Now we look back. The lights died. Darkness swallowed the room. Rachel screamed. The last thing she saw, her own reflection in the doorknob, smiling. Then, black. And somewhere far off in the dark, the mirror whispered again, one more behind the veil. Oh. Rachel awoke in darkness. She wasn't lying on a floor. There was no floor. Just a cold, damp mist that clung to her skin and tasted of mildew and something far worse: copper. Decay. Her limbs refused to move at first, as if the air itself had weight. She blinked into nothingness, surrounded by a fog so thick it seemed alive. It moved against her cheeks like breath and whispered like memory. You saw too much. The voice wasn't close. It wasn't far. It was around her. Rachel sat up slowly. The mist curled at her ankles. Shapes pulsed in the grayness. Tall shadows that twisted and flickered just beyond recognition. She tried to speak, but her voice came out cracked. "Emily!" No reply, only the sound of slow dripping, water against stone, then footsteps, soft, bare, coming closer. She rose shakily, peering into the veil of fog. A shape began to form, a figure moving through the mist. Its steps didn't disturb the ground. Its outline shifted as it walked, like smoke in human form. Rachel held her breath. It stopped, just a few feet away. Then she heard it, a sound like glass grinding against teeth. The figure raised an arm, long and pale. In its hand was something wrapped in black silk. It dropped the bundle at Rachel's feet. She hesitated, then knelt and pulled the fabric away. A mirror shard, clean, untouched. She looked into it and screamed, not because she saw herself, but because she didn't. The reflection was of a room, her childhood bedroom, unchanged since the day she left home at 17. The soft lilac wallpaper, the stuffed rabbit on the dresser. But sitting on the bed was herself, rocking slowly, muttering, eyes wide and blank, lips moving without sound. Then in the shard, the figure in the bed turned to look straight at her and smiled. The glass cracked in her hands. Blood welled where the edge cut her skin. The mist roared and the whispers rose. She remembers, but not enough. Carve it. Rachel stumbled back, her breath clouding in the frozen air. The fog around her parted slightly, revealing dozens of floating mirror fragments. Each one held a different scene, a different moment. A child staring into a bathroom mirror and seeing her reflection blink twice. A woman at a vanity watching her reflection age while her own face stayed young. A man breaking his mirror only to find his reflection crawl back up from the shattered pieces. In the center of it all, a mirror larger than the rest floated vertically in the mist. Its frame was obsidian, covered in strange etchings. Letters that moved when she looked at them directly. She felt drawn toward it, not by curiosity, by compulsion. As she neared it, her ears filled with the sound of breathing, loud, wet, multiple lungs inhaling at once, exhaling as one. The surface of the mirror shimmered. Then a face appeared. Emily, or something wearing her face, but the eyes were filled with fog. Her mouth moved slowly. The name. You know the name. Say it. Rachel shook her head. What name? The surface cracked slightly. Say it. The air grew colder. Rachel's skin broke into goosebumps. From the fog behind her, hands began to stretch forward. Long, gray, fingerless limbs that pulsed like muscle and reached like roots. She backed against the floating mirror. I don't know any name, but part of her did, buried deep, a name she hadn't spoken in years. Something her grandmother whispered once long ago, when Rachel was just a child with night terrors. A name that made the windows frost over. A name she had forgotten until now. She pressed her bloody palm against the mirror and whispered it. Neverin. The fog screamed. The hands shrieked back into the mist. The mirror shattered into light. Rachel fell through nothing, fell through memory. She landed on hardwood, warm, real. The air was different now. She sat up. She was back in Emily's house. But something was wrong. The walls bled light, dim and sickly. She turned, and there, standing where the mirror had once been, was a figure cloaked in fog. Neverin. The name carved in her memory, carved now in blood on the walls. The creature didn't speak. It didn't need to. Rachel understood. The mirrors were never just glass. They were invitations, and someone had accepted. Emily had, and now Rachel had too. The creature stepped forward and touched her face with one long frozen finger. And Rachel saw everything, every secret, every lie, every reflection that ever wasn't quite right. The fog surged, and the whisper returned. Now you see, and now you stay. The mirror was gone, not shattered, not removed, gone. Rachel stood in the center of Emily's hallway, heart thundering in her chest. The frame that once held the cursed silver surface was now an empty void, dark and bottomless. Her reflection didn't appear in it anymore. Nothing did, just a slick, black nothingness that drank light and sound. She could still feel its pull, a slow, magnetic ache behind her eyes. The whisper of her own breath echoing inside her head like it was trying to escape or return. Her skin still bore the touch of the thing in the fog. Neverin. The name still sizzled inside her bones, like a brand beneath her flesh. The name wasn't just a memory. It was a key, a curse, a contract. Something had been sealed the moment she spoke it. Rachel turned away from the void and walked down the stairs. Each step groaned underfoot, but not from weight. The sound came late, like the echo of a footstep that didn't belong to her. She stopped and looked over her shoulder. Nothing behind her. But when she turned back around, the mirror was standing at the bottom of the staircase. Not a copy, the same one. Whole again. Its surface was flawless, glowing faintly like moonlight on a wet road. It hadn't moved. It had shifted. Rachel stepped down slowly, one foot, then another. The air grew colder. The silence pressed against her ears like hands made of static. Then came the sound. Tap, tap, tap. From within the mirror, something wanted out, or in. Her reflection appeared, and it wasn't hers. Emily stood in the glass, but not as she had been. This Emily was wrong. Skin too smooth, eyes too wide, teeth slightly too many. She raised her hand slowly and pressed it to the glass. Rachel didn't move. Emily smiled. We are on both sides now. Her voice came from nowhere, from behind Rachel, from inside her skull. Rachel backed away. The lights in the house flickered, and then she saw them. Footprints, wet and red, leading from the base of the mirror, across the floor, into the kitchen. She followed. Each print pulsed faintly. Not water, not blood, something in between. She stepped into the kitchen. The smell hit her first. Rot, soil, rust. The fridge door was open. Every bulb inside had burned out, yet something dripped from the top shelf. Thick, dark. She closed the door slowly, breathing shallowly. When she turned, someone was sitting at the table, her grandmother. Or what wore her grandmother's skin? The old woman's head was tilted, her eyes cloudy, lips twitching as if chewing a word too large to swallow. Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat was dry as paper. The old woman lifted a hand and pointed toward the window. Rachel followed her gaze. The backyard. At the far end of the overgrown grass, beneath the tree with the split trunk, a figure was digging, one slow shovelful at a time. She stepped outside. The night air was wet and close. Her feet sank slightly into the soil with each step. The digging continued. When she reached the tree, the figure stopped. It turned. It was Rachel, but younger, eyes filled with something ancient. She held out a mirror shard. You left something behind. Rachel took it with shaking hands. The surface shimmered. She saw a room she had never entered, a basement, stone walls slick with moisture, chains, and a man, bound, mouth sewn shut, eyes weeping blood, a symbol carved into the floor beneath him, the same one Rachel had seen on the obsidian frame. She dropped the shard. It didn't fall. It dissolved into mist. The young version of herself smiled and vanished. The ground trembled. Rachel stepped back toward the house, but it wasn't there anymore. Only mirrors, dozens, hundreds, standing upright across the field like tombstones. Each one reflected something else, an alternate path, a hidden moment, a lie untold, and in every one, blood. Not on the glass, behind it. Rachel ran, through the field of mirrors, dodging her own faces. Her screams echoed. Some mirrors whispered her name. Others laughed. One shadowed as she passed, cutting her arm with a scream of its own. She reached a clearing at the center. There, a single mirror stood taller than the rest, framed in bone, dripping, waiting. She approached, breath ragged. Her reflection stared back, then blinked. The blood on her arm vanished from her real body, appeared on the reflection. Then her skin turned pale. The reflection stayed warm. Her breath slowed. The reflection breathed faster. They were switching. It was claiming her. She had seen too much, spoken the name, opened too many doors. Rachel backed away, but her feet wouldn't move. The mirror pulsed. You saw behind the silver. Now you bleed on both sides. The glass cracked. Rachel screamed, and somewhere, far beyond the mirrors, Emily laughed, or the thing wearing her voice did. The name Nevarin echoed once more in the dark, and then silence. Somewhere beyond the mirrors, Rachel breathed again. It was not a gasp for air, not a desperate cry. It was a slow inhale, like returning from beneath the surface of a black sea. She opened her eyes to darkness. No sky above her. No ground beneath, just an endless space of flickering reflections, shards suspended mid-air, like pieces of thought shattered in a dream. They turned slowly in the void, glinting with scenes of the living world. Her face flickered on some. Others showed places she had never seen. A boy running into a mirror and disappearing. A mother screaming at her reflection while her baby cried in another room. A man tearing out his own eyes in front of a bathroom vanity as a dozen copies of himself smiled behind him. Rachel floated among them, weightless. Somehow she had not been pulled entirely into the other side. Not yet. She looked down at her hands. They shimmered faintly, like she was trapped between states, solid and ghost, breath and shadow. The last mirror had tried to claim her, to finish the exchange, but something had stopped it. She remembered the way the blood had reversed, how her cut had vanished, and appeared in the reflection instead. She had resisted, fought the pull. Now she drifted in this in-between place, a chasm of silence, until a sound broke through, a slow, dragging scrape, like fingernails down chalkboard glass. Then a whisper. You did not shatter. Rachel spun, eyes wide. The mist reformed ahead of her, and from it stepped Emily, no longer bloated, no longer waterlogged. She looked as she had before the mirror took her, but there was something in her eyes now. Something ancient, something borrowed. Emily, Rachel whispered, please, come back. You don't belong in this place. Emily tilted her head, laughed softly. It wasn't her laugh. You still believe there's a back to come to? Rachel floated closer. I saw you. I saw what they did to you. I can help you. Emily smiled. A mirror behind her cracked slightly. That girl died the night she buried the truth. Another mirror snapped like dry bone. Rachel shook her head. Then help me finish what you started. We can still close it. You cannot close what you already opened with a name. Rachel felt the air shift. Mirrors began to pulse. Echoes of screams returned in waves, bouncing from shard to shard. She turned to flee. Though there was no floor to run on, her body simply moved, pulled by desperation. Emily's voice followed her like smoke. Silence breaks tonight, Rachel. The glass remembers. Rachel fell through light, then through shadow, then into her own bedroom. But it wasn't her bedroom. Everything was reversed, like she had stepped into the mirror version of her life. The books on her shelf were backward. Her photographs stared out with blank faces. The mirror on her dresser was not her own. It was the mirror, still whole, still perfect, still waiting. She walked toward it barefoot, her breath fogging the air with each step. She reached out, and her fingers passed through the surface like smoke touching water. Then cold, unbearable, freezing cold. She was pulled in. Rachel stood in a corridor lined with mirrors. All of them whispered. She could hear her name on every surface, like 100 mouths hissing behind the glass. Then one mirror cracked, then another. One by one, they began to shatter. Screams poured from the broken shards. Not echoes, lives. Every lie untold, every guilt buried, every face forgotten. Rachel screamed too. Her voice joined the others, rising through the void. But then she remembered something. The name, Neverin. She spoke it once more. The mirrors froze. The air pulled inward, a windless vacuum sucking the screens away like dust into space. In the center of the hallway, the final mirror stood. The source. Its surface rippled. Then, silence. Rachel stepped forward. Blood began to drip from the top corner of the glass. It ran in a slow stream, forming words across the silver. "Speak it!" Her hand trembled. She reached forward and pressed her palm to the mirror. It burned. It hissed. And the word came from her mouth like venom. "Confess." The mirror cracked. Once, twice. A spiderweb spread across it, like veins pulsing in rage. Behind it, the figures shrieked. Emily, Trevor, dozens of others, faceless, trapped in the glass. Their mouths opened in unison, and Rachel screamed. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was will. She slammed her hand into the mirror again and again. With each hit, more cracks, until shatter. The sound ripped through the void like a sonic boom. The mirror exploded outward. Light flooded everything. And for the first time in what felt like years, there was no whisper. Only silence. Real silence. Not waiting, not watching. Just still. Rachel awoke in the garden. The house behind her was dark. The mirror frame was gone. Only the wooden dresser remained, rotting, empty. The velvet cloth lay crumpled on the ground, unmoving. She rose slowly, alive, alone. She walked into the house and lit a candle. The hallway was quiet. No fog, no reflections out of sync. She passed a mirror on the wall. Her face stared back, and blinked when she did. No smile, no other eyes, just her. Rachel sat on the floor and cried, not from fear, but from release. That night, the mirror did not return, but in her dreams, the shards still turned, waiting. The morning came quiet, too quiet. Rachel sat in the kitchen, both hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. The tea had long gone cold, untouched. Her gaze never drifted from the window. The sky was a sickly gray, the kind that pressed down like a thumb on the chest. Rain threatened, but never fell. Wind hissed through the grass like it didn't dare rise above a whisper. It had been 3 days since the mirror shattered. 3 days since she clawed her way out of that fog-soaked world of reflection and ruin. And yet, she didn't feel safe, because the silence was wrong. She hadn't heard her own voice since then, not in conversation. Not even a whisper. Something inside her was waiting, unsure, listening. The mirror was gone, yes, the hallway empty. But she felt them. Not seen, not heard, felt. They had not all been destroyed when the glass broke. Not all. Some had slipped through. At dusk, she walked the house, candle in hand. The walls breathed around her, old wood creaking softly. Each footstep echoed longer than it should have. Shadows clung too tightly to corners. She paused at the hallway where the mirror had once stood. Just wood now, naked. But as the candlelight flickered, she saw something strange. the faintest outline. A silhouette burned into the wallpaper, as if the frame had left a scar. A darker patch of pattern, a memory of something that should no longer exist. Rachel cautiously ran her fingers along the mark. It was warm. Behind the wall, something pulsed. She stepped back. Then the sound came. Drip. A wet sound. Then again. Drip, drip. From the ceiling. She turned her head slowly. A line of red ran down from the plaster above. Thick, fresh blood. It slid down to the corner of the wall. Rachel lifted her candle higher. The red stain on the wall shifted, twitched, then spread. Letters formed, slowly, written in blood. "You saw us." Her throat tightened. A hiss rose from behind her, like steam escaping between teeth. She turned. Every mirror in the house, every small one she had forgotten about, in drawers, behind closet doors, even the backs of framed photos, was cracked. Not broken, cracked. One long spider-thin fracture that seemed to widen the longer she stared. In the bathroom, the mirror above the sink began to fog. She hadn't taken a shower. The air was dry, still. The glass misted from within. Words carved themselves slowly across the condensation. Neverin never left. Her knees went weak. She turned away from the mirror and caught her reflection still staring at her. It blinked. She didn't. She dropped the candle. Darkness swallowed the room. In the pitch black, a whisper came from everywhere at once. One can never unsee. Rachel fled the house that night. She didn't grab a coat or a bag or her phone. She ran down the road, the wind howling in her ears. When she reached the edge of town, she collapsed under a street lamp and wept. A neighbor called the police. They asked her where she had been. She tried to explain. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. Weeks passed. Rachel stayed in a facility not far from the city. Clean white walls, warm food, locked windows. She didn't speak. She didn't sleep. But every night, when the moon was high and the hallway was still, the nurses heard it. A slow tapping from her room, always 3. Tap, tap, tap. They replaced the mirror in the bathroom with polished metal. It still cracked. They removed all glass. She carved words into her skin instead. I saw behind. I saw them bleed. I am the door. One night, the hallway camera caught her staring into the darkness, mouth wide, eyes unblinking. Her voice low and broken. I never left the mirror. I only brought it with me. The footage glitched. For 3 full seconds, the screen went black. When it returned, she was standing beside her bed, smiling. The same smile Emily wore. The screen cracked, and for the first time in the history of the facility, a mirror bled. No one knows what happened to Rachel after that night. She disappeared without a trace. Her room was empty, her bed untouched. The nurses who opened the door said the air inside was freezing. And in the center of the room, drawn in blood, was a mirror frame, empty, waiting, somewhere in a quiet neighborhood. A girl buys an old vanity from an antique shop, takes it home, cleans the dust, uncovers the mirror. It's flawless, silver, beautiful. She leans in, smiles, and from the other side, someone whispers back,